When will we receive the R5? Has Canon stopped crippling their cameras? What camera should I use for making films? What's the best vlogging camera? And more of your questions answered in this episode. Let's get into it.
Delivering informative capability-based reviews and tutorials on camera gear, filming techniques, and content creation.
Hi, I'm Simon, and this is The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're new here, subscribe to get notification of new videos like this one as they come out. And all the links to everything I talk about in this video, including gear discussed, are placed in the description down below. But before I go any further, I want to talk to you about this Canon 50mm f1.8 STM lens. And I'm giving this one away. If you'd like a chance to win it, simply subscribe to my channel before July the 31st. That's it. No jumping through hoops. If you'd like to find out more details, I've got it in the description down below. Today's episode is all about answering your questions. I've got about 7 of them lined up. So let's go to our first one right now and not waste any more time. Luke Williams said, if you pre-order the R5 in July, when do you think you'll receive it? That's a very good question, and it's a very tough one to answer. It depends on several factors. How many Canon has actually made, and the demand. And despite there being a global economic downturn, there has never been so much demand, so much hype for a camera that I can recall in recent history. So this one's really tough. My thoughts are, if you really want to get a chance at getting this one really quickly, find camera sites that are allowing you to pre-order now. I did mine, and then you'll probably get yours quicker than anybody else, but you'll be on the bleeding edge, so if there's problems with functions and features, you'll have to wait for a firmware update. So thanks, Luke, for that question. The next question is from Montana. I shot Canon for 20 years, and Canon is finally releasing a camera system their customers wanted, not what Canon wanted them to have. Also, there's a cripple hammer thingy which supports my claim. My question would be that if the R5 does not show signs of crippling, why the change? Are they just being nice, or has competition and dropping the ball forced them to actually put out a camera the masses want? For the sake of the Canon shooter, I hope it's a stunning body. That's an excellent question. If you ever want to know why a company's doing anything, the first thing you really want to do is take a look at their vision statement and look to see their strategic plan. These things are usually readily available if they're a publicly trading company. Back in 2016, Canon released their 2016, I think it was Phase 5, they called it Phase 5, but their 2016 to 2020 strategic plan. And part of that plan, they included a couple of things that we might find interesting. They wanted to restructure the global network. They wanted to enhance R&D capabilities through open innovation, and that's very significant. But they also wanted to reinstill Canon spirit as a foundation for new growth. Anytime you change your strategic plan, it can take several years for the effects of that to trickle down to the market. So it's a 4-year plan, and it ends in 2020, and that's when we're seeing the EOS R5. Canon has also recognized that the market is shrinking, and they've stated that they're okay with that. Canon for the longest time was the dominant player, and to a large degree they still are, but they're losing out to Sony and others in certain segments. So I believe that this new economic change, or the new economic situation, the dwindling market, where we are today, well, I don't think where we are today in terms of the current global economic situation has much of an impact on this, because their plan was created 4 years ago and set in motion back then. While this situation might affect them going forward, anything that's been put in place is still moving forward. So in terms of why are they changing, outside of that, I'm not too really sure. Maybe they're living up to what they put into their strategic plan. Maybe they're listening to their sales reps, and their sales reps are telling them, look, we're having trouble pushing these cameras. People are going to Sony. You've got to give us more. It's very difficult to push the 5D Mark IV in 2020. It's very difficult to push the EOS R or the RP. People would rather go with Sony. So a lot of speculation there, but I do look to the strategic plan. I think a lot has changed in the Phase 5 from 2016 to 2020. So thanks for that question, Montana. OJ Hansen asks, when shooting a movie, short or feature, to be played at film festivals, how does full frame and crop sensors come into play? When projected onto a large movie theater screen, how does it affect picture quality blown up at that size? A prime example being the quality of an S35 8K RED camera versus a full-frame 4K Sony a7R4. Thanks. The type of gear you have can make a huge difference on what the outcome is going to be. And what I would really, it's more important is what is the outcome you're looking for. I believe it was Steven Soderbergh that shot an entire feature film using an iPhone. Now, as you can imagine, the iPhone doesn't have great dynamic range, it doesn't have that great of a lens camera, but it gave a certain look. Say what you want about the merits of that film, but that was a feature film shot on an iPhone, so you can use pretty much any camera you want, but it's going to blow up differently. It's about detail. So the amount of detail that you have in the iPhone didn't have a huge amount of detail. You didn't have that same color accuracy. You didn't have it. It wasn't as clean. The low light wasn't very good. If you shoot in a C300 Mark III, for example, you've got 16 plus stops of dynamic range. You're going to have a much different look than if you shoot in an iPhone or a Sony A7R4 or an EOS R5 or a Canon 90D. The point I'm trying to get at is, what look are you going for? I remember I saw The Matrix when it first came out. My friend had downloaded a bootleg copy and the quality wasn't that good. But because that movie was, the way it had that tinge of green, that poor quality actually added to the look of that film, and I thought it looked so much better watching it in that not so perfect quality. So the real point of this is, know the type of quality you want and then seek out the cameras that are going to give you that. The next question comes from OJ as well, and his question is, what are some possible ways the Canon cripple hammer might come into play on the R5? I'm almost at a loss for words here. Well, first of all, we know very little about the R5. We know quite a bit about video, and we know the codecs it's going to use. So let's take a look at video. If Canon didn't tell us it was going to be H.265, they could have put out motion JPEG, right? And that would be a pretty serious cripple hammer type thing to do. But they didn't. They gave us H.265, they gave us 10-bit 422, and that's really good. But they could, for example, in 8K, limit recording times to 2 minutes or 5 minutes. That's putting a restriction on it. But I can tell you that one thing that this R5 is not going to do, it's not going to put the cinema line of cameras out of business. It's not going to have the same dynamic range as a C300. It's not going to have 16 plus stops. Color accuracy might not be as good. In terms of photos, well, if we look at the 12 frames per second mechanical and 20 frames per second electronic, that pretty well matches up to the 1DX Mark II pretty good. Yes, the 1DX Mark II can do more, but still you'd think, hey, these cameras are quite similar, right? Well, no, we know nothing about the buffer size, so I expect the buffer on the R5 to be more in line with how the 5D Mark IV performed, because keep in mind that the 5D Mark V. The EOS R5 is essentially the successor to the 5D Mark IV, and it's a pretty big jump. So when you're thinking of how they could potentially reduce functionality, or as you say, use the cripple hammer or hammer of injustice, as I've been calling it, well, look back to the 5D Mark IV to see how they could do it. Now, in terms of video, they haven't used motion JPEG. They've actually given us 120 frames per second in 4K as well as 1080. But I don't know too much. Nobody knows too much about the photo side of things. So how are they going to alter things there? So it's really hard to speculate. We're going to know in about 2 weeks. They're supposed to be announcing the EOS R5 and R6 on the same day, on or around July the 2nd. So we'll know more then. Our next question is from Tony Capo. I have a question for the old full frame versus crop sensor. Is it better to have a 20 megapixel full frame camera or a 30 plus megapixel on a crop sensor? Well, Tony, it depends on what you're shooting. For me, as an ordinary filmmaker that shoots video most of the time, I'd rather have a 20 megapixel sensor that shoots 4K full width. It's so much less effort for the camera to be able to produce that video if it's doing full width on a 20 megapixel than a 30 megapixel, and you're going to have less noise. So that's my point of view. If you're a photographer, you're probably going to take this a slightly different way. And it's almost like one of those academic arguments. You're setting the restrictions right up front, and I don't like to do that. What I like to do is I like to ask the questions, and I think you're going to be far more successful in choosing the right camera if you ask, what are the capabilities I want in my next camera? List them all out. I've done this in previous videos where I compared the Canon 90D and the T8i, and I line them up and, well, dynamic range, I want high detail, I want color accuracy, and I list up all these capabilities, and then I look at the different cameras to see how well they perform, and you're much better off doing that. APS-C cameras can do a very good job. They can do almost the same job as a full-frame sensor, depending on the scenario. If I'm doing portrait work, then no, you obviously want to go full frame. If you're doing weddings, you can do really good job with a crop sensor, but full frame is really going to help you out when, for whatever reason, they insist on having a low light situation, and your APS-C is going to struggle at that point. So thanks for your question. Ted asks, do you prefer a camera with great autofocus like Sony and Canon, or a camera with professional tools like waveform, 4K DCI like Panasonic cameras? Okay, again, this is another one of those questions where you're setting me up. You're saying, which features matter to you more? And I'm going to answer this question the same way that I answered the last questions. The camera that matters to me the most is a camera, and these are some of my capabilities. I want highly accurate and reliable autofocus. I want detailed 4K and detailed 1080. I want great color accuracy. I would like to have a dual SD card slots, but that's not critical. And these are just some of the capabilities that I want in a camera. I want to produce great photos as well as good video. I want to have good dynamic range. And that matters to me more. Now, waveforms, don't get me wrong, I would love to see waveforms, but I've worked for years without them. I think, I know what you're trying to pull out of me here. Look, Panasonic does a great job with waveforms and some of these other things, and I wish, it's like a flippy screen. There's no reason everybody shouldn't do it. Why can't they give us waveforms? Why can't they give us histograms that stay on the screen when we press that record button? I think that's essential. So, no, I don't have, I shouldn't say I don't have features that I don't prioritize or others. I have a selection of mandatory features, and autofocus is one of those where it is absolutely imperative that it is bang on, because I do a lot of run and gun, and when you're doing run and gun work, manual focus doesn't work. You really need to be able to luck on your subject, because your subject, in my case, is very unpredictable. For studio work, it doesn't matter. Waveforms don't matter, and also the autofocus doesn't matter as much, because I can't even see my flippy screen behind the teleprompter, so that's out of the question unless I put on an external recorder, and then things just get a little bit more complicated. So it's the short answer to your question is it's about providing the capabilities that I want, and those mandatory capabilities, they matter more than anything else. And if it misses some of those mandatory capabilities, then that camera is usually not something I'm going to consider. But I would definitely say autofocus matters to me more. Sasha asks, what camera would you suggest for photography? I don't do video. I don't know if I should buy the EOS R or wait for the R6. The R5 will be completely out of my budget. This is kind of a tough one. Again, it's based on your scenario. What kind of photographer are you? Are you landscapes? Are you wildlife? Do you do astrophotography? Do you do portraits? Because if you're doing a lot of wildlife and it's amateur and not professional, then you could work with you could use the 90D with some really good lenses on it. The lenses, in a lot of cases, matter a whole lot more than the body itself. In terms of the EOS R is actually a very good camera for photography. It does really good results. It's basically the 5D Mark IV that in many cases is improved slightly. But it's not a huge jump. It's basically just a mirrorless version of the 5D Mark IV with some slight improvements. I would wait. Look, we've only got about 2 weeks to go. Wait to see what the R6 and the R5 are like, and then compare these three cameras side by side and do what I suggested with the other two viewers. List out the capabilities that you need as a photographer, and then have the capabilities here for this camera, have the capabilities here for the R6, and have the capabilities here for the R5, and color code them. I usually use simple things such as red, orange, and green, like you would with traffic lights, and it helps me to visually score and see which one's better. Gary asks, what small camera would you recommend for vlogging? Something that has really good face autofocus, small and very low f-stop. I bought the G7X Mark III and the face autofocus wasn't very good, so I returned it. Thank you in advance. Well, Gary, I would take a serious look at the Sony ZV-1 or the ZV-1. I was really kind of blown away by that camera. I had a video the day before saying what was supposed to be in it, and it was mostly bang on, but the one thing that really tripped me up is how much this thing costs. It's somewhere between, I think it's around, it's either $750 or $850. I've got a link in the description down below, and that's with the miniature tripod. For the price, I think this thing is going to hit everything you're looking for. The f-stop, may not be exactly where you want it to be, but one thing it does very, very well. It's based for a single person, you're vlogging, and what it really, I think this is really amazing, it locks on your face and it ensures that your face is exposed at the expense of the background. So if you're walking from shade into video, it does a really, really good job of keeping you exposed properly. That and a whole bunch of other features, I think, make this at, essentially around $800 shipped to your door with taxes. I think it's a camera you should definitely look at. There are some other cameras out there, but this one is designed purely by Sony from the ground up as a vlogging camera. So that's my #1 pick. I know I'm going to get slammed in the comments below, but because there's a lot of cameras out there you can use. But this one's new. It's just come out, and I think it's a terrific camera. In this episode of Behind the Scenes, I want to talk about that video I put out last night about the Canon EOS R5 with photos of it showing it was going to have a 26.2 megapixel sensor, a Digic 8 processor. I regret putting that video out, and if it hadn't been so late in the morning, I probably wouldn't have published it. I probably wouldn't even have filmed it. Have you ever heard the expression, nothing good comes of making phone calls after midnight? I think the same goes for videos. I'm usually in bed by around 11 o'clock, and I was just finishing up a tutorial. It was around 1 o'clock, and somebody had sent me a message saying, hey, take a look at this. I looked at it. I saw it from Canon Watch. I saw another site that had talked about it, so I thought, oh, there's something to this. And it was in German, so I didn't fully decipher what was there. I know some German, but not enough, not even close to being fluent. So I started to do the video. More and more information came out. And that should have been enough for me to stop filming and say, you know what, this is pure speculation. This is fake. I mean, the EOS R5, Canon has already come out and said it's going to have H.265, 4K recording, 8K recording, RAW recording, C-Log. You can't do that on a Digic 8 processor. You would have to have at least 2 of them to even come close to it. And that it was going to do 8-bit 420. They've already stated it's going to do 10-bit 422 internal. And that should have been enough. And I know in the video I said, this doesn't make any sense, and I went on that, but still, I'm not helping the marketplace out. I'm not helping you out. And I don't consider myself an influencer, but these videos do influence. And the last thing I want to do is put somebody off of getting a Canon or a Sony because of information I put out that's not accurate. That's not what I'm about. This experience for me is not about making money. Sure, I get some money to fund my equipment and pay for my hobby, but it's a lot of work. I enjoy the learning experience. It's not about just trying to peddle and make a whole bunch of money. And one person said, well, you're probably just going to delete the video. Well, I'm not, because I made a mistake. I'm not going to hide from it. I generally don't delete my videos. I leave them up there so everybody can see. You can see the mistakes I can make. You see the progress. But my commitment to you is simply this. If it's pure speculation and it's something significant like this, I'm just not going to touch it. I'm still going to cover rumors. I think Canon Rumors is a great site. They do a really good job of verifying this stuff. SonyRumors.com does a good job. There's still some credible stuff out there, and I don't want to be peddling stuff that isn't accurate. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to the audience. And I'm not one of these people with tattoos of Canon or Sony on my arm. I like the technology, period. I happen to have Canon because that's what I started with, and I think a good 80% of you know it's not easy to switch, and we do it begrudgingly because of the cost and because of the headache. What I've learned from that experience is, by the time, if it hits 11 o'clock at night and I'm not finished, I'm just going to put it off, turn the computer off, and continue the work the next day. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win this guy here. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. All equipment used and notes are placed in the description box, show more box, or down arrow thingy next to the title on the mobile app.